The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched out like a vast bowl. Thousands of seats filled the space, each one holding a different alien species. Some had tentacles, others had scales, and many had features that humans could not even describe. The air smelled strange, filled with the breathing gases that different species needed to survive. Minho Kim sat in the small human section near the back. His gray hair was neat, and his hands rested calmly on his lap. He had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years now. 12 long years of watching the Council treat humanity like children who did not understand how the galaxy worked. Today was no different. The speaker at the center of the chamber was a Vorthak named Counselor Vextar. His purple skin gleamed under the bright lights, and his forearms moved as he spoke. His voice was loud and harsh, like metal scraping against stone. "The human proposal is foolish," Vexitar said, his words echoing through the chamber. "They want us to spend billions of credits to help some dying planets. These worlds are weak. If they cannot survive on their own, why should we waste our resources on them?" Many aliens in the chamber made sounds of agreement. Some clicked their claws, others buzzed their wings, and a few stomped their feet. The noise was loud and ugly. Minho felt his jaw tighten. The dying planets were home to 40 million innocent beings. Their sun was growing old and cold. Without help, everyone on those worlds would freeze to death within 2 years. The humans had offered to build new cities for the refugees and give them food and medicine. All they asked was for the Council to approve the mission. Jiwoo Park, Earth's chief diplomat, stood up slowly. She was younger than Minho, with sharp eyes and a strong voice. She had been fighting these battles for 7 years, and Minho could see the tiredness in her face. "Honored Counselor," Jiwoo said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "These are not weak beings. Their worlds are dying because their star is old. This could happen to any of us. The humans have the ships and the technology ready. We can save these people without taking anything from other worlds." Vexitar's eyes glowed brighter. "The humans always say they can fix everything. But you are young species. You have been in space for only 300 years. Many of us have been traveling the stars for thousands of years. We know better than you what is worth saving." More agreement sounds came from the chamber. Minho noticed that the same species always made these sounds: the Vorthaks, the crystal beings, and the gas floaters. They were the old powers in the Council. They had ruled the galaxy before humans ever left their home planet. But Minho also noticed something else. Many species stayed quiet. The newer members, the smaller groups, and the ones who lived on the edges of Council space, they did not make sounds of agreement. Some even looked uncomfortable. "We have given much to this Council," Jiwoo continued. "Human doctors work in hospitals across the galaxy. Human engineers build your space stations. Human soldiers keep peace between your worlds. We do not ask for payment. We do not demand special treatment. We only ask that you let us help those who need it." "Yes, you help," said another voice. This came from Speaker Zilthak, the head of the Council. He looked like a giant snake with arms and legs. His voice was soft but cold. "But humans are too emotional. You see suffering and you want to fix it right away. You do not think about the bigger picture." "What bigger picture?" Jiwoo asked. "Resources are limited," Zilthak replied. "Credits spent on dying worlds cannot be spent on important projects. If we save every weak planet, we become weak ourselves." Minho had heard this argument many times before. It never made sense to him. The humans had done the math. Saving the 40 million refugees would cost less than what the Council spent on decoration for their meeting chambers each year. The vote came quickly. The chamber filled with colored lights as each species cast their decision. Red meant no, green meant yes. Minho watched as red light after red light appeared above the alien sections. When the counting finished, the result appeared on the big screen. 847 votes against, 1 vote in favor. Earth was alone again. Jiwoo sat down heavily. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her face remained calm. She had learned not to show anger in front of the Council. They saw human emotions as weakness. After the session ended, Minho and Jiwoo walked back to the human embassy in silence. The building was small compared to the massive structures that housed other species' diplomatic missions, but it was efficient and clean, like everything humans built. That night, Minho sat in his office looking out at the stars. Nexus Prime was a beautiful world, covered in crystal cities and floating gardens. It was the perfect place for the Galactic Council's headquarters. Representatives from 1,000 worlds could breathe the air and enjoy the climate. But Minho was not thinking about the beauty. He was thinking about 40 million people who would die because the Council thought their lives were not worth saving. He opened his desk drawer and took out a small device. It looked like a simple communication tablet, but it was much more than that. This device could send messages that no alien technology could detect or stop. Minho typed a short message. Protocol 7. Initiate immediately. He pressed send. Across the galaxy, similar messages reached human commanders, diplomats, scientists, and citizens. Most people receiving the messages had never heard of Protocol 7, but those who needed to know understood immediately. Within hours, human ships began changing their routes. Human workers on alien stations requested leave. Human students at galactic universities started packing their belongings. It all looked normal. Humans traveled frequently for work and family visits. No one paid attention to the gradual increase in human movement. 3 days later, Minho cleaned out his office. He took only personal items, photos of his family, a few books, and the small device. Everything else stayed behind. As his ship lifted off from Nexus Prime, Minho looked back at the crystal cities one last time. The council was probably meeting, right now, discussing important matters and making decisions that would affect billions of lives. They would not notice the humans were gone until it was too late. 6 months had passed since the last human ship left council space. Taewon Choi stood in his empty office on Nexus Prime, packing the final items into a metal box. As the last human administrator in the galactic capital, his job was to close down all human operations and leave everything clean and organized. The work was almost done. All the files were stored properly. All the equipment was labeled and ready for whoever would take over. All the bills were paid. Taewon had always been good at finishing tasks completely. Outside his window, the crystal towers of Nexus Prime sparkled in the afternoon light. Alien beings moved through the floating walkways between buildings. Everything looked normal and peaceful, but Taewon knew better. He had access to the council's administrative systems, and he could see the problems. Growing every day, his communication device buzzed. The message was from Dr. Crystal, the head of Nexus Prime Medical Center. "Where are your human doctors?" the message said. "We have been waiting for Dr. Yoonji Lee to return from her leave for 3 weeks. The emergency ward cannot function without human staff." Taewon did not reply. Dr. Lee was probably on New Terra by now, setting up a hospital for the refugees from the dying worlds. She was not coming back. More messages came throughout the day. The head of the Space Traffic Control needed Commander Junho back from his family visit. The director of the Engineering Corps wanted to know when the human technical teams would return from their training exercises. Each message showed the same thing. The aliens had never realized how much they depended on humans for basic operations. Taewon walked through the embassy one last time. The medical wing where human doctors had treated alien patients free of charge was empty. The legal aid office where human lawyers had helped species navigate council law was closed. The emergency response center where human coordinators had managed disaster relief across the galaxy was dark and silent. In the main conference room, pictures still hung on the walls showing successful human missions. There was Admiral Sungmin Han shaking hands with the Altarian Prime Minister after stopping a civil war. There was Dr. Min Jae-yoon receiving an award for curing the Red Plague that had threatened to wipe out 3 species. There was Captain Hyun-woo Nam leading the rescue mission that saved an entire planet from an asteroid impact. All those people were gone now, and they had taken their knowledge, their skills, and their willingness to help with them. Taewon's final task was to deliver a report to the council secretary. He walked through the crystal corridors of the government complex, passing aliens who looked busy and important. None of them paid attention to him. The secretary was a small round creature with big eyes and tiny arms. She took Taewon's report without looking at it. "Thank you for your service," she said in a bored voice. "The transition team will take over. Human responsibilities next week." "What transition team?" Taewon asked. "The council has appointed representatives from various species to handle the work that humans used to do," she replied. "It should not be difficult." Taewon almost laughed. The humans had been doing the work of thousands of specialists across dozens of different fields. Finding replacements would be like trying to rebuild a starship with only a few spare parts. But he said nothing. That was not his problem anymore. 2 days later, Taewon boarded the last human transport ship leaving Nexus Prime. The captain was a young woman named Yuna Seo, who had been working as a council security officer until the previous week. "How do you feel about leaving?" she asked as the ship pulled away from the station. "Relief," Taewon answered honestly. "I have spent 15 years trying to make the council work better. Now I can focus on helping my own people build something new." The journey to human space took 12 days. During that time, news began reaching them from across the galaxy. The stories were not good. A trade dispute between the Vorthax and the crystal beings had turned violent. Without human mediators, both sides were refusing to talk. 3 shipping routes had been closed, and prices for basic goods were rising quickly. The medical station at Kepler 7 had shut down because they could not find doctors to replace the human staff. 2 species that had been receiving treatment for genetic diseases were now without help. A mining accident on Rigel Prime had trapped 300 workers underground. The human rescue teams that usually handled such emergencies were gone. Local teams were trying to help, but they did not have the right equipment or training. Captain Seo showed Taewon the military reports. They were even worse than the civilian news. "Admiral Han took 47 ships when he left," she said. "Those were our fastest and most advanced vessels. But it turns out that nearly half of all the officers in the council fleet were human. Even on alien ships, humans ran the engineering sections and weapons systems." "What about their own people?" Taewon asked. "Most alien species focused on command and strategy," Seo explained. "They left the technical work to humans because we were good at it. Now their ships are running with skeleton crews and many systems are breaking down." The reports showed the same pattern everywhere. Humans had filled the jobs that other species found boring or difficult. They had maintained the infrastructure, provided the medical care, handled the emergency responses, and kept the peace between hostile groups. Without them, everything was starting to fall apart. When the transport ship finally reached New Sol, the main human colony in their new territory, Taewon was amazed by what he saw. The planet looked nothing like the primitive frontier world he had expected. Massive cities covered the landscape, but they were different from the crystal towers of Nexus Prime. These buildings were practical and efficient, designed for people who actually lived and worked in them. Green spaces and parks were everywhere. The air was clean and fresh. The spaceport was busy with ships arriving and departing. But these were not the desperate refugee vessels that Taewon had imagined. They were sleek, modern ships that looked more advanced than anything the Council used. "Welcome to the Human Cooperative," Captain Seo said with a smile. 6 months without the Council's rules and regulations. Look what we built." As Taewon walked through the spaceport, he saw aliens working alongside humans. These were members of species that had left Council space to join the human colonies. They looked happy and healthy. A news screen in the terminal showed updates from across the galaxy. The Vorthak crystal conflict was spreading. Food shortages were appearing on 17 worlds. The Council had voted to raise taxes to pay for emergency services, but many member species were refusing to pay. Meanwhile, in human space, refugee ships arrived every day carrying people who had given up on the Council's protection. The humans welcomed them all and gave them new homes. Taewon realized that the galaxy was changing. The old order that had ruled for thousands of years was breaking down, and the humans who had been treated as junior partners were building something better to replace it. The Council still did not understand what they had lost, but they would learn soon enough. 2 years had passed since the humans left and the galaxy was burning. Dr. Min Jae-yoon stood on the observation deck of the medical station orbiting New Sol. Through the transparent walls, he could see refugee ships arriving every few hours. Each vessel carried thousands of beings fleeing the chaos that had consumed Council space. The latest ship was from the Kepler colonies, the same worlds the Council had refused to help. Captain Hyunwoo Nam had led the evacuation himself, bringing 400,000 survivors to safety in human territory. "Doctor," called Nurse Airy from behind him. "The Altarian families from the morning transport are ready for their medical checks." Minjae nodded and followed her to the examination rooms. These refugees looked tired and scared, but they were alive. In Council space, they would have died from the plague that was sweeping through their home systems. "You saved us," whispered an elderly Altarian as Minjae examined her children. "When the sickness came, the Council said there were no doctors available. But you came for us." Minjae smiled gently. "We help those who need it. That is what humans do." But the truth was more complicated. The humans could have stopped the plague easily if they had still been working with the Council. Dr. Minjae had developed treatments for similar diseases many times before. Human medical teams had the knowledge and equipment to contain the outbreak within weeks. Instead, 2.3 billion beings had died because the Council's medical system had collapsed without human support. The irony was painful. The Council had called humans too emotional, too willing to waste resources on the weak. Now their coldness had led to the largest disaster in galactic history. Meanwhile, the political situation grew worse every day. On Nexus Prime, Councillor Garam Kim watched the emergency session with growing horror. The Altarian representative was screaming at the Vorthak delegation while the crystal being ambassador made angry buzzing sounds. The chamber that had once been a symbol of unity and cooperation now looked like a war zone. "Order!" shouted Speaker Zilthak, but his voice carried no authority anymore. Too many species had stopped listening to the Council. The crisis had started with the Vorthak crystal trade war, but it had spread quickly. Old grudges that had been buried for centuries came back to life. Border disputes that human diplomats had resolved were breaking out again. Species that had cooperated for generations now treated each other as enemies. "The Rigel Mining Guild refuses to accept Council authority," reported the secretary. "They have declared independence and allied with the Human Cooperative." More angry sounds filled the chamber. 17 star systems had already left the Council to join the humans. Others had simply declared independence and stopped paying taxes or following Council laws. "This is temporary," insisted Councillor Vextar. "The humans will come back when they realize they need us." But Garam Kim knew better. She had been one of the few Council members who had supported human proposals. She had tried to warn her colleagues that treating Earth as a junior partner was dangerous. Now she was watching her predictions come true. The worst part was the military situation. Admiral Quintar of the Council Defense Force delivered his report with visible shame. "Our fleet strength is down by 60%. The ships are still operational, but we do not have enough trained crew members to run them properly. When the humans left, they had taken more than their own vessels. Human officers had served on alien ships throughout the fleet. They had run the engineering departments, managed the weapon systems, and trained new recruits. Without them, the remaining crew could barely keep the ships flying." "What about the defense of our borders?" asked Speaker Zilthak. "The outer rim sectors are undefended," Admiral Quintar admitted. "We have pulled back all our forces to protect the core worlds." This news caused panic in the chamber. The outer rim contained 47 star systems and over 30 billion inhabitants. Without Council protection, they were helpless against pirates, raiders, and hostile neighbors. Within days, 8 of those systems had requested protection from the Human Cooperative. The humans had agreed immediately and sent their own ships to guard the borders. Captain Unisio commanded the human task force that took over defense of the Antares sector. Her ships were sleek and powerful, using technology that the Council had never seen before. "How did they advance so quickly?" wondered Admiral Quintar when he saw the intelligence reports. The answer was simple. Without Council regulations holding them back, human scientists and engineers had made 2 years of progress in areas that would normally take decades to develop. The bureaucracy and political games that had slowed down innovation in Council space did not exist in human territory. The economic collapse was just as devastating. Trade between different species had dropped to almost nothing. The shipping routes that human merchants had maintained for decades were now dangerous and unreliable. Pirates attacked merchant vessels because there were no human patrol ships to stop them. Prices for basic goods rose dramatically. Food, medicine, and manufactured items became scarce on many worlds. The efficient distribution networks that humans had built over centuries fell apart in months. Some species tried to build their own trade systems, but they lacked the experience and organization that humans had developed. Most alien cultures were good at one or two things: warfare, art, science, or manufacturing. But humans had been good at everything, and they had connected the different species together like glue holding a machine in place. Without that glue, the machine broke. The human cooperative, meanwhile, was thriving. President Jun-Ho Lee stood before the human assembly in the capital city of New Seoul. Representatives from 200 star systems filled the hall, not just humans, but members of dozens of species who had chosen to join the cooperative. "We have received formal requests from 43 worlds asking for membership," he announced. "Each one will be evaluated based on our principles of cooperation, mutual aid, and respect for all sentient life." The cooperative was everything the Council had claimed to be but never was. Species worked together as equals. Resources were shared based on need, not political power. Conflicts were resolved through mediation and compromise, not threats and intimidation. Most importantly, there was no hunger, no disease, and no war within cooperative space. The refugee species that humans had rescued were not treated as charity cases, but as full citizens with the same rights and opportunities as everyone else. Dr. Min-jae finished his shift at the medical station and returned to his apartment on New Seoul. From his balcony, he could see the lights of the city stretching to the horizon. Somewhere in those lights were Altarians, Rigelians, Antarians, and dozens of other species building new lives in safety. His communication device chimed. The message was from his old colleague, Dr. Scythak, a crystal being who had worked with him at the Council Medical Center. "The plague has reached our home system," the message said. "Half our population is sick and we have no doctors left. The Council cannot help us. Please, old friend, can you save my people?" Min-jae stared at the message for a long time. Then, he sent a reply. "Prepare your transport ships. We will take your sick to our hospitals and find homes for the healthy. But you must leave Council space. We cannot help those who remain under their authority." The answer came quickly. "We accept. Thank you." As Min-jae watched, another refugee ship appeared in orbit around New Seoul. The exodus from Council space was accelerating. Soon there would be more beings living under human protection than under Council rule. The galactic order that had lasted for thousands of years was ending, and it was ending not with conquest or revolution, but with a simple choice: stay with a system that had failed or join one that actually worked. Most beings were choosing the humans. 5 years after the human departure, the galaxy had split into two very different worlds. Former Council Speaker Diane Park stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel as it approached human space. She had left the Council 2 years ago when her own home system of Altair declared independence. Now she led a desperate mission to find the species that had once served the galaxy so faithfully. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from Human Border Control," reported the communications officer. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and professional. "This is New Terra Control. State your business in human cooperative space." "This is former Speaker Da-hyun Park, representing the Free Systems Alliance," she replied. "We request permission to meet with human leadership on urgent galactic matters." There was a pause. "Permission granted. Please proceed to Orbital Station 7. A diplomatic escort will meet you there." As their ship moved deeper into human territory, Da-hyun was amazed by what she saw. The space around each planet was busy with traffic, but it moved in organized patterns. There were no military checkpoints, no customs inspections, no bureaucratic delays. Ships moved freely between worlds, carrying goods and passengers in a network of trade and cooperation. The planets themselves looked prosperous and peaceful. Cities covered the surfaces in efficient patterns, with green spaces and clean air visible even from orbit. Space stations and manufacturing facilities orbited each world, producing the goods that supplied hundreds of star systems. How did they build all this so quickly? Wondered Counselor Garam Kim, who had joined the mission. The answer became clear when they docked at Orbital Station 7. The humans had not built this alone. Beings from dozens of species worked alongside humans in every role: engineers, scientists, administrators, security officers, and diplomats. These were not the refugees and outcasts that Council propaganda had described. They were skilled, educated, beings who had chosen to leave their old homes and help build something new. Many of them were former Council citizens who had grown tired of corruption, bureaucracy, and endless political games. Admiral Yuna Seo met them at the airlock. Dahyun was surprised to see how young she looked. 5 years ago, Seo had been a junior officer in Council security. Now she commanded one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. "Welcome to the cooperative," Seo said with a smile. "President Lee is waiting for you." The journey to New Seoul gave Dahyun time to think about how much had changed. The last time she had seen humans, they were the quiet, hard-working members of the Council who never complained and always did their jobs. Now they were confident, leaders of a growing alliance that was rapidly becoming the dominant power in their region of space. President Jun-ho Lee received the delegation in a simple office overlooking the capital city. He looked older than Dahyun remembered, but there was strength and determination in his eyes that had not been there during his days as a Council diplomat. "Speaker Park," he said, standing to greet her. "I'm sorry, former Speaker Park. It's good to see you again." "The honor is mine, President Lee," she replied, "though I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." Lee gestured for them to sit at a round table. No guards were present, no security scanners, no formal protocol. It was the kind of meeting that would have been impossible in the Council chambers. "I assume you're here about the situation in former Council space," Lee said. Dahyun nodded. "The galaxy is dying, President Lee. Half the Council members have left or declared independence. Wars are breaking out everywhere. The economy has collapsed. Billions of beings are suffering." "I know," Lee replied quietly. "We've been monitoring the situation. It's tragic but not unexpected." "Then you know we need your help," said Garam Kim. "The humans built the systems that held our civilization together. Without you, everything is falling apart." Lee was silent, for a moment looking out at the city below. When he spoke, his voice was sad but firm. "Counselor Kim, for 300 years, humans served the Council faithfully. We built your hospitals, maintained your trade routes, protected your borders, and mediated your conflicts. And for 300 years, we were told that our contributions were not important, that we were too young and too emotional to understand. Galactic politics. Some of us tried to change that," Dahyun said. "I supported human proposals whenever I could." "I know you did," Lee replied, "and I'm grateful for that. But supporting us in small matters while allowing the larger injustices to continue was not enough." Admiral Seo activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. 2/3 of the map was colored red, indicating conflict zones, economic collapse, or governmental breakdown. The remaining third was colored blue, the human cooperative and its allies. "Look at what we've accomplished in 5 years, Seo said. "No wars, no poverty, no disease outbreaks. Every being who lives in our space has access to food, shelter, medical care, and education. We've built the civilization that the Council always claimed to represent." "How?" asked Garam Kim. "By treating everyone as equals," Lee replied. "When the Rigelian engineers joined us, we didn't make them follow human regulations. We learned from their expertise. When the Altarian artists came, we didn't dismiss their culture as primitive. We celebrated it and incorporated it into our own." He stood and walked to the window. "The Council's mistake was believing that cooperation meant domination, that one species or a small group of species should make decisions for everyone else. We've proven that true cooperation means partnership." Dahyun felt hope rising in her chest. "Then you'll help us rebuild? You'll return and fix what was broken?" Lee turned back to face her, and she saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. "No," he said gently. We're not coming back. But people are dying, Garam Kim protested. People are dying in council space, Lee corrected. In cooperative space, we're saving lives every day. We have refugee ships arriving constantly, carrying beings who have chosen to leave the old system and join the new one. You can't save everyone, Dahyun said. We can save those who want to be saved, Seo replied. Our borders are open to any being or any world that wishes to join us, but we won't go back to being the council's servants. Lee sat back down and leaned forward. Speaker Park, you were one of the few council members who treated humans with respect. I'll make you an offer. Bring your people to cooperative space. We'll find homes for them, jobs for them, and a future for them. But leave the council behind. What? About the billions who can't leave? What about the worlds that are too weak to travel or too proud to abandon their old homes? They made their choice when they supported a system that valued power over justice, Lee said. We made ours when we left. The meeting continued for several hours, but the outcome was clear from the beginning. The humans would not return to council space. They had built something better and they were not willing to abandon it to fix the mistakes of their former oppressors. As the diplomatic ship prepared to leave human space, Dahyun stood at the observation port watching New Seoul disappear behind them. The city's lights twinkled like stars, and she could see other ships moving between the space stations in orderly patterns. What do we tell the Free Systems Alliance? Asked Garam Kim. We tell them the truth, Dahyun replied. The humans have moved on. They're not coming to save us. If we want a better future, we'll have to build it ourselves or join them. And if we can't? Dahyun was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, then we face the consequences of our choices, just like they faced the consequences of theirs. As their ship crossed back into the chaos of former council space, she made her own choice. Within a month, Dahyun Park would submit an application for Altair to join the human cooperative. She would not be the last former council leader to make that decision. 10 years had passed since the humans left council space, and the galaxy looked completely different. Ambassador Seojin Park walked through the corridors of the first human cooperative embassy in former council territory. The building was located on Centauri Prime, a world that had declared independence from the council 3 years earlier. Now it served as a neutral meeting ground for the various factions that had emerged from the council's collapse. The embassy was not grand or impressive, like the old council buildings. It was practical and welcoming, with clear signs in dozens of languages and medical facilities for refugees who arrived seeking help. Ambassador, called Director Nari Choi as she approached with her daily report. She ran the cooperative's aid, core operations in the region. We have 17 more refugee ships scheduled to arrive this week. Most are from the Vorthax systems. Seojin nodded. The Vorthax, who had been among the loudest voices against human involvement in galactic affairs, were now fleeing their own collapsing empire. Their worlds had descended into civil war after their government could no longer provide basic services. Q. We have space for them, he asked. The New Haven colony can take 10,000 more residents, Nari replied. And the industrial complex on Kepler 9 is looking for workers. These Vorthax are skilled engineers. They'll adapt well to cooperative life. It was strange how history had turned out. The species that had once dismissed humans as primitive servants were now seeking human protection and citizenship. Many of them made excellent cooperative citizens once they learned to work with others as equals rather than trying to dominate them. The communication console in Seojun's office chimed. The message was from Captain Minho Nam, who commanded the border patrol ships that protected refugee convoys. Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from the Nexus Prime system. Their government is requesting immediate humanitarian assistance. Seojun smiled sadly. Nexus Prime. The former capital of the Galactic Council, the crystal city where aliens had once debated the fate of trillions while ignoring human wisdom. What's their situation? He asked. Food riots, Ambassador. Their supply networks have completely broken down. The population is starving, and their security forces have joined the protesters. The government has lost control. Through his office window, Seojun could see cooperative ships loading supplies for refugee settlements. The contrast was stark. In cooperative space, there was abundance and peace, while the old council worlds descended deeper into chaos with each passing year. Send relief ships, Seojun decided. Full medical support, food distribution, and temporary shelters. But make it clear that this is emergency aid only. If they want long-term help, they need to apply for cooperative membership. Yes, sir. Should I inform President Lee? He already knows, Seojun replied. He approves all major aid operations personally. President Junho Lee stood in the Cooperative Assembly Hall, addressing representatives from 300 star systems. The hall was larger than the old council chamber had been, but it felt warmer and more welcoming. Representatives sat in mixed groups rather than species-segregated sections, and the conversations before official meetings were friendly rather than hostile. The state of the cooperative address is simple, Lee began. We are strong, we are growing, and we remain committed to the principles that brought us together. The statistics he shared would have amazed the old council. 0 military conflicts within cooperative space. 0 worlds experiencing famine or disease outbreaks. Unemployment below 2% across all member systems. Educational opportunities available to every child regardless of species or economic background. We now protect 430 billion sentient beings across 300 star systems, Lee continued. 60% of them are not human. They are our partners, our friends, and our fellow citizens. Representative Sora Kim from the Altair system stood to speak. She had been one of the first former council members to join the cooperative. President Lee, we continue to receive requests from former council worlds asking us to return and restore their old government. How do we respond to these appeals? Lee's answer was the same as always. The council system failed because it was built on inequality and domination. We won't rebuild a broken structure. We'll continue to welcome any being or world that wants to join our community of equals. The audience made sounds of agreement. These representatives had experienced both systems, the old council with its corruption and bureaucracy, and the new cooperative with its efficiency and fairness. The choice was obvious to anyone who had lived under both. After the session, Lee walked to his private office and opened the secure communication channel that connected him to all cooperative worlds. Reports flowed in from across human space, showing the same pattern of growth and prosperity everywhere. New colonies were being established at a rate of 5 per month. Scientific discoveries were shared freely between all member species, leading to rapid advances in medicine, engineering, and agriculture. Trade flowed smoothly along routes protected by cooperative patrol fleets, but the reports from outside cooperative space told a different story. The old council now controlled only 32 star systems, down from over 1,000 at its peak. Most of the original member species had either joined regional alliances, declared independence, or applied for cooperative membership. Wars continued to rage across former council territory. The Vorthak Civil War had killed over 40 billion beings. The Crystal Collective had shattered into 17 competing factions. Dozens of species faced extinction as their worlds became uninhabitable due to neglect of environmental systems that humans had once maintained. The saddest reports came from Nexus Prime itself. The crystal capital that had once been the center of galactic civilization was now a dying city. Most of the alien diplomatic missions had closed. The Great Council chamber sat empty except for a handful of representatives from the few remaining member worlds. Lee activated a holographic display showing the final council session, which had been broadcast across the galaxy. Only 43 beings were present in a chamber designed for thousands. The current council speaker, a trembling old creature named Velmar, stood at the podium where great leaders had once addressed the galaxy. Citizens of the galaxy, Velmar said in a weak voice, the council acknowledges that we have made mistakes. The departure of the humans has shown us the value of their contributions. We formally request their return to help rebuild our civilization. The message was broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy, but Lee knew it would change nothing. The time for apologies and requests had passed years ago. Later that evening, Lee stood on the balcony of his residence, looking out at the lights of New Seoul. The city never slept. Beings from hundreds of different species worked around the clock in shifts that accommodated their different biological needs. His assistant, Ji-woo Park, joined him with the day's final reports. "The refugee processing centers are at capacity again," she said. "We're going to need to build more temporary housing." "Approved," Lee replied. "What about the Nexus Prime relief operation?" "Successful. We've established food distribution centers and medical stations. About 2 million beings have requested transport to cooperative space, including government officials." "Most of them," Ji-woo confirmed. "Even former Counselor Vextar has applied for asylum." Lee almost smiled at that. Vextar had been one of the most vocal critics of human involvement in galactic affairs. Now he was begging for human protection. "Process his application like any other," Lee said. "If he can learn to work cooperatively with other species, he's welcome here." "Sir, there's one more thing," Ji-woo said hesitantly. "Speaker Velmar sent a personal message. He's offering to dissolve the council and transfer all its remaining assets to the cooperative. He wants to know if that would convince us to take responsibility for the former council worlds." Lee was quiet for a long moment, watching a transport ship rise from the spaceport carrying new immigrants to their assigned colonies. "Send this reply," he said finally. "Speaker Velmar, the Galactic Council chose to exclude humans from meaningful participation in galactic governance for 3 centuries. You called us too emotional, too primitive, too young to understand the complexities of civilization. You were wrong. We understood perfectly. We just built something better. The Council's assets are welcome, but its authority died when you decided our contributions had no value. The galaxy belongs to all of us now, not to the few who claim to rule it." As Ji-woo went to send the message, Lee remained on the balcony. Somewhere in the distance he could hear music from one of the cultural festivals that happened almost every night in the city. Beings from dozens of worlds were sharing their art, their food, and their stories with each other. This was what the Council had claimed to represent but never achieved. True cooperation between different species, based on mutual respect rather than dominance and submission. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had simply stopped holding up a system that was too broken to function without constant maintenance. And in its place, they had built something worthy of the diverse, intelligent beings who called the stars their home. The old galactic order was dead. The new one was just beginning.